Coach, I'll start with one. Moving to a new position group here this year. How's it going over to linebackers?
Great. It worked out to where several guys within the room I actually recruited, so I already had a pretty good relationship with them, and I would hope I do a pretty good job of that anyway. But it's going great. I was around those guys a lot already, being the D-line coach, and there's a lot of similarities to the things we're teaching and things like that. The verbiage is nearly identical, so it's going great. They've got a great attitude. We've got a lot of depth there. Got a lot of inexperience, but a lot of depth in terms of guys with similar traits. So I'm really excited about that group, and man, they got a great attitude to be coached. So I'm really excited about them.
Hey, Josh, with you moving from a position coach to co-DC with Coach Curtis this season, how much does that change, your practice schedule when you're on the field with the guys, and also, how much does that change as you're game planning and preparing to enter this 2022 season?
From a practice standpoint, I think that was a big part of why I felt like I needed to move to linebackers. It's hard to call the game when you coach a group of 20 people. You know what I mean? And or to game plan rather. I think that'll help. Coaching less guys. The way I can give more focus to that. And then from a game planning standpoint, I don't think there'll be a ton of difference there. You know what I mean? I'll primarily deal with the front, and Coach Curtis primarily deal with the back end, and then both of us combine for the big picture and things like that. But it's always been here, though, a game plan by committee. It's not one guy or two guys sitting in the room dominating the conversation, coming up with all the ideas. We've got a great group of coaches, and that's how it's going to be. So, I don't think it'll be that different. You know what I mean? Just because I have a different couple of words next to my name. I don't know if you'll see a ton of change in day to day.
Josh, did previously coaching linebackers at Lenore Ryan help with the transition because you're used to coaching, the linebacker core?
Definitely, yeah, definitely, easily. That was why I felt confident in it and was excited about it. I really enjoyed my year there. Me coming here was not somewhat of a surprise for me. That year we had a really good year while I was there, and so I'm excited about coaching linebackers and just being around the same group of guys. So yeah, that definitely helped prepare me.
You talk about the DC title now.
Your mic's off. Yep.
Okay. Talk about the DC title now, and things not really changing much. With the game plan and working with Coach Curtis, I guess, who will have the final call, or is that a week-to-week thing, or has that even been discussed yet?
It's been discussed. I think it'll be a case-by-case basis to a certain extent. I think we're going to be on the same page situationally. Who's going to be calling it? I don't want to say who that is for now, but I think it'll be more situationally within the game. Whether it be down and distance or field zones and stuff like that. So probably somewhere how Coach Freese does it on offense. That's kind of how that's going to go. But we're focused on spring right now. But yes, that's been discussed, and that's the elementary version.
Josh, you look at your room and you talked about a couple guys that you coached on the D-line. I saw you work with Akeel Washington at linebacker in the first practice.
Mm-hmm.
Casey Seeger started at linebacker, moved to end, and now is back at linebacker. And how comfortable did you feel moving those guys there to that position?
Well, Akeel, I think, you could say he is moving to linebacker, but at the same time, you're going to see him play a lot of bandit and D-end still. I think more so the spring is a way you can dual train guys and stuff like that. I think, my philosophy as a coach has always been, how can you get the best 11 people on the field? And he's one of our best players, so if we can find a way to get him, Darrell, and Trayshawn on the field at the same time, we're cooking with grease, So I think that was more of that mentality there. But he'll move around. Just linebacker's a great thing to work on during the spring. And then Casey, I think Casey was always going to move to linebacker. We really just moved him to bandit last year because we thought we were going to be shorthanded a little bit. I'm excited about him too. He'll be back a little later on, coming off a Achilles injury he had. So I'm not really working with him right now. But yeah, excited about still coaching both of those guys.
And Coach, you're moving, as we're talking about, from defensive line coach to linebackers, and you go from a room that was arguably the most the deepest position on the team, at defensive line, and now you take over a linebacker room that you only typically play 2, maybe 3 guys at a time, but you also lose 2 very strong production guys from last year's team. And what are you seeing out of your guys so far in spring as you try to replace those stats that those 2 guys had last year?
Well, Ahmad, you could view Ahmad Walker as a starter. I mean, he started several games, and, I think him returning, that's quite a bit of experience. He was only a freshman, though, so, typically you see a really big jump year 1 to year 2, so looking to see that out of him. And then Akeel Washington hasn't played linebacker but has a tremendous amount of leadership qualities, and I think he's going to do really well there. And then Tyron Dupree has played a ton of snaps here. So between Ahmad and Tyron, you've got 2 guys who've played a lot of snaps here. And then you've got newcomers Mike Smith, who I think is going to be a guy who will contribute quickly. And then Jerome Jolly, I think this is the year where he kind of has changed his body enough to where he can hold up in there. And I think he's going to have a pretty stinking good role for us at will linebacker. So, you got 5 to 6 guys, you feel pretty good about, and that's about what we'll play with. So I'm pretty excited about them. Like I said, the spring's about getting those guys developed and getting them a lot of reps. And the only way they're going to get better is if they go out there and screw it up a few times. So is what I keep telling them. So just throwing those guys out there, putting them in tough spots. We're moving them at both spots to try to put a lot on them and put some pressure on them. So I think that's what you'll see moving forward with that group.
Question about working with Coach Garrett, I guess, coming in, him taking over the D-line. Have you been able to kind of exchange notes and kind of help him get started a little bit since you're so familiar with that group?
Yes, obviously I was real involved in that process of talking to him, leading up to hiring him. And him and I already speak the same language from a technique standpoint and things like that. And that was something that was really important to me from my standpoint, was not just because I'm partial to those guys, but anytime you have a talented group, you don't want them to take a step back because it's a bunch of new verbiage and teaching and stuff like that. There's no reason to slow those guys down. So it was really big for me to make sure those guys could transition well, and I think it's been seamless. I think the things, if you come out and watch drills he's doing, it's the same one that the guy before was doing. And I told him I think we've upgraded at D-line. I really do. At D-line coach. I think he's a great coach. I think he does a great job of connecting with the guys. And then just when you can bring experience from the level that those guys are trying to play at, right? You know what I mean? They're gonna take that with tremendous value. So I think we hit a home run there for sure.
Coach, what, if anything, have you had to change about your process since assuming the role as co-defensive coordinator?
I think I got to watch tape a little slower because I got to watch all 11 people. Before it was just let me see if we were stabbing our hands and choking people out and stuff like that. And I got to make sure we're all on the same page, and Coach Curtis and I, and so I think it's a little more of a process with that in the prep and things like that. Obviously linebacker is the most dynamic position on the field, so we're involved in run, pass, everything, right? So as a position coach, there's a lot going on there. And then just from a recruiting standpoint, now you're connecting with every position, not just defensive linemen. So just a process of a few more things. So I wouldn't say any of it's terrible, obviously, but it's just a transition from a time standpoint. But I'm enjoying it, man. I love it.
You and Coach Simons have known each other for a long time, and you've served under him as a defensive coordinator a couple different places. How much have you guys communicated after he's kind of moved down to Texas and talking about this transition and moving forward with this team?
I think the most thing we talk about is how much our sons are going to miss each other. Our 5-year-olds were born 2 weeks apart, so obviously we have the same vacations. But he we've talked about it. Hey, remind me, what did we do here? And he's asking me the same thing about some D-line stuff down there. So just, we're both really busy, obviously, so not a ton, but definitely helping each other with the process of a few nicks and knacks or just atypical things, maybe conversations that I wasn't privy to, especially in the back end before. But yeah, I think you're not going to see a ton of difference in our defense. You might see a different frequency of certain things, but it'll be very similar to how it's been the last 3 years. Like I said, I think the emphasis is just going to be how can we get the best 11 people on the field at once.
Josh, I wanted to ask about, you rattled off a lot of names for, the linebackers you expect to contribute, but from a depth perspective, do you think this group is deeper than it maybe has been during the staff's first 3 years?
I definitely do. You look at it, years past, in a 70-play game, I think you'd have one linebacker at one spot would play about 50 out of the 70, and the other one was playing about 55 out of the 70. I don't see it being that way. Akil might play a few more snaps than the other ones just because he'll be playing multiple positions, but actual snaps at linebacker, I think you'll see a lower ratio. So I think that'll be a little different just because I think we've built some depth of some program guys. Guys who have been here. You think about it. Anthony Butler was here for 1 year. Story Jackson was here for 1 year. Rashad was here for 1 year. We've got every guy that's playing linebacker now are guys who have been on our program except for Mike. So you've got guys who know the system. They've been in the weight room with Dom and things like that. And I think your linebacker in a lot of ways can be the quarterback of your defense if you choose for it to be. I'm really excited about having a bunch of guys who have been in our program. And that's no knock on guys we've had that have come through for 1 year. I think it's just a different style, so I'm pretty excited about Mike being a new guy, but as well those guys who have been in our program and know how we do things.
How has Mike, as a JUCO transfer, how has he, adjusted to the new program?
It's really unique for me because I've coached a lot of junior college players over the course of my career, and Mike was actually in junior college for 3 years because of COVID. So you've got much more experience from a junior college player than you normally do. You know what I mean? Because normally JUCO guys are a little behind the 8 ball when they get here in the spring, learning football, what the verbiage, da-da-da-da-da. Mike's played so much football, and he's played multiple positions. He came to the Gulf Coast as a safety, and just got bigger and stronger. So he's transitioned a lot better than most junior college players I've coached just because he was there so long. He's seen a lot of football. He is a football player. I think he's a great athlete, don't get me wrong, but he's a better football player than he is an athlete. So his transition's been really good.